In early 2009 in Phoenix, Arizona, one of the hardest-hit housing markets in the United States, a 34-year-old single mother named Sarah stood outside a foreclosed home, holding her phone, trying to decide whether to walk away. Just 6 months earlier, she had nearly lost everything. Sarah worked as a medical billing assistant, a steady job with an average income of around $42,000 a year. She lived paycheck to paycheck, raising her 6-year-old daughter alone. No safety net, no family money. In 2007, at the peak of the housing market, she made a decision she would later regret. She bought a small townhouse, not because she fully understood the risks, but because everyone around her was doing the same. Prices were rising, banks were approving loans easily. It felt safe until it wasn't. When the crash hit, everything changed. Property values collapsed. Her townhouse dropped nearly 40% in value. For a moment, she considered walking away, just abandoning the mortgage like so many others around her. One night, she sat at her kitchen table, bills spread out in front of her, her daughter asleep in the next room. She did the math. If she quit, she would lose everything. If she stayed, it would be tight, very tight. That night, she made a decision. She would not panic. She cut every unnecessary expense, canceled subscriptions, sold her car, took public transport to work. Slowly, month by month, she stabilized. But this is where the story changes. Most people in her position would have spent years trying to recover, trying to get back to zero. But Sarah noticed something. All around her, homes were being repossessed. Entire streets lined with bank-owned signs. Properties that had sold for $250,000 were now listed for $120,000, sometimes less. At first she ignored it. It felt too risky, too soon. But the idea stayed with her. One evening, after putting her daughter to bed, she opened her laptop and started researching. Not emotionally, but logically. What were rents in her area? Which neighborhoods still had demand? What would it cost to hold one property? For weeks, she studied. Then came the moment. A small 2-bedroom home just 10 minutes from her work. Foreclosed, empty. Price, $98,000. Her heart told her this was crazy. Her situation was still fragile. She had only just stabilized her own finances. But her analysis told her something else. The rent would cover the mortgage. The location was strong. And the price already reflected worst-case fear. She stood outside that house, phone in hand, about to call the agent, and froze. What if I'm wrong? That question is where most people stop. She took a breath and asked a different one. What if this is the opportunity? And then she made the call. That decision changed her life. Over the next 2 years, she bought 2 more properties. Carefully, conservatively, never overextending. By 2015, those homes had doubled in value. By 2020, they were generating steady income. And Sarah, the single mother who nearly lost everything, was financially free. Not because she avoided the crash, but because she learned how to think inside it. And that is the difference between panic and positioning. Every major financial crash in history creates 2 types of people, those who panic and those who position. The difference is not luck, it is mindset. Before we go further, you need to understand something deeper. During a crisis, your brain is not wired for wealth building. It is wired for survival. This connects to something known as loss aversion, a psychological principle discovered by Daniel Kahneman and Amos Tversky. It shows that people feel the pain of losses roughly twice as strongly as they feel the pleasure of gains, which means during a crash, you are biologically programmed to avoid further loss, even if that means missing a much larger opportunity. That is why people sell at the bottom. The goal is not to remove fear, it is to recognize it and override it with logic. Now let's look at one of the most famous examples in modern financial history, the 2008 financial crisis. For years leading up to 2008, the United States housing market had been booming. Banks were issuing mortgages aggressively, often to borrowers with low credit quality. These loans, known as subprime mortgages, were packaged into mortgage-backed securities and collateralized debt obligations, sold globally, and rated as safe, even when they were not. House prices kept rising, creating a dangerous belief that housing could never fall. But underneath, the system was fragile. Defaults began increasing, and once that started, the entire structure collapsed. Banks failed, credit froze, markets crashed. And in the middle of that chaos, an investor named John Paulson made a decision. He didn't guess, he analyzed. He studied mortgage data in detail, loan-to-value ratios, default probabilities, borrower quality. And he realized something critical. These mortgage-backed securities were massively overvalued. So instead of buying assets, he did the opposite. He shorted the housing market. Specifically, he bought credit default swaps, financial instruments that paid out if mortgage bonds failed. At the time, very few people understood them. Even fewer believed they would work. But Paulson stayed with the data, and when the system collapsed, his fund made over $15 billion. Now here's the psychology. This is herd behavior, the tendency to follow the crowd, even when the crowd is wrong. During bubbles, it inflates prices. During crashes, it accelerates panic. Lesson: when everyone agrees, look deeper. Now let's go back even further. The Dutch Republic in the early 1600s, one of the most advanced economies in the world at the time. Global trade was expanding. Wealth was increasing. And within that environment, tulip bulbs became a speculative asset. Rare, exotic, status symbols. Prices surged. Contracts were traded. At the peak, some bulbs were worth more than houses. Then confidence broke. Buyers disappeared. Prices collapsed. Most people reacted emotionally, selling at any price. But Elias Van Doren did something different. He stepped back and asked, what still matters after this ends? He watched quietly while others speculated. He noticed what others ignored. Trade routes, storage facilities, agricultural land. So while others chased bulbs, he saved capital. When the crash came, he moved quickly. He bought infrastructure, warehouses, and farmland from those desperate to sell at prices no one imagined months earlier. As stability returned, he controlled the systems behind the economy. Now the psychology. Crashes distort attention. They make you focus on collapse instead of continuity. Lesson: focus on what survives. Now the dot-com crash. Late 1990s, internet companies rising rapidly. Many had no profits, but massive valuations. Then the crash. Trillions wiped out. Mark, a software engineer in Seattle, watched it unfold. He felt pressure to act, to recover. But he didn't rush. He waited. He analyzed. He bought companies with real value. Slowly, over time, they recovered. Now the psychology. Urgency leads to mistakes. Patience improves outcomes. Lesson: you don't need to be first. You need to be right. Now, finally, the COVID crash. Global uncertainty, markets falling fast, but also acceleration, online connectivity, retail investors. Aisha, a delivery driver in London, saw it. She studied online discussions, Tesla, GameStop, momentum building. She participated carefully and built gains. But then something changed. Mainstream media picked it up. Headlines everywhere. Explosive gains. New investors rushing in without understanding. And Aisha recognized the pattern. This was late-stage attention. She began selling, gradually, locking in profits. Soon after, volatility increased. Sharp rises, sharp falls. Late investors panicked, but she stayed calm, because she understood something critical. When opportunity becomes obvious, it is often near its peak. Now the psychology. Crowd excitement signals risk. Lesson: know when to step back. So what ties all of this together? Mindset. Clarity over emotion. Discipline over reaction. Because crashes don't remove opportunity. They concentrate it. And the people who win are the ones who think clearly when others cannot. So when the next crash comes, ask yourself, am I reacting or am I positioning?